Hello chess fans and welcome to Chess Vibe, and today we are going to talk about the game between Alireza Firouzja versus Shakhriyar Mamedyarov, and this game is from the European Team Chess Championship 2021 and this is the round number 9 we are going to talk about. And if Alireza Firouzja is able to win this game, then he would be able to break the barrier of 2800, and if he would be able to lose this game or draw this game, then he would not be able to cross 2800 in this tournament. So let's check it out. Will Alireza Firouzja be able to manage to break the barrier of 2800 and be able to become the youngest player to cross 2800 barrier? And yeah, definitely to surpass Ding Liren as well. So first of all, before starting the game, if you are new to my channel, then make sure to subscribe the channel, share this video with everyone to see this interesting game. So yeah, let's talk about this game. So first of all, Alireza Firouzja with the white pieces started the game with 1 e4. And Mamedyarov with the black pieces, a very strong GM from Azerbaijan, replied with e5. Knight f3, knight c6, and now we have bishop to c4. And now after bishop c5, we have the Goku piano on the board. Castle, knight f6, d3, h6. Idea of h6 is very simple. Black is stopping this bishop g5 ideas because bishop g5 is very irritating for black. So h6, we have c3, a very common and the most interesting reply from the white side, and Alireza likes to play this position a lot because after c3, white is having many options. White can go for playing b4, a4 at some point, grabbing more space on the queen side, and second, white can break the position in the center by playing d4, having a nice space in the center. So after playing c3, black replied with d6. Rook e1, castle by black, and now we have h3 by white, stopping bishop g4. And now a5 by black, grabbing more space on the queen side. But at the place of playing a5, a much better move would have been to play bishop e6, simply going for the bishop. But okay, a5 not a bad move. Knight to d2, bishop to e6. We have a bishop trade. Knight to b3 hitting the bishop. Bishop goes back to a7, and now we have bishop to e3, asking for a bishop trade. Mamedyarov gone for the bishop trade. We have a4 hitting the knight, knight to d2, and d5, trying to open up the position in the center. Because black is having two pawns on the e file, which is a bit of irritating for black. But at the other hand, black is having the open f file. We have d5, and now we have rook to e2 back. Perhaps idea was to add the idea of playing rook e2 in this position was to stopping this d4 ideas, because after d4 now the rook is no longer hanging. We have b5. Definitely black is going for grabbing more space in the queen side, but at the place of grabbing more space on the queen side, a much better move in this position could have been to play knight to h5. And after knight h5, black is already planning to play knight f4, hitting the rook, hitting the pawn. Grabbing more space in the king side as well and keep putting some pressure on the king. But we have b5, e into d5, and after e into d5, it is a crucial moment for black to decide what he wants to do. He can capture the pawn with the three materials. He can capture the pawn with the queen, with the pawn, or with the knight. The most natural reply looks to capture the pawn because you are just making your pawn structure better. But after capturing the pawn with the pawn, knight into e5 is coming up, and after knight into e5, rook into e5, white is simply a pawn up. That's why the best move and the correct way for in this position to play is to play knight into d5, which was played by Mamedyarov. And yeah, many of you were thinking the pawn structure is bad and white can go for capturing the pawn. Yes, white can, but after knight into e5, knight into e5, rook into e5, and Mamedyarov prepared this move, a3, a very powerful move. After a3, basically now the b2's pawn is attacked, and white have to capture the pawn or he can push the pawn, but it doesn't matter because whatever you do, the pawn on c3 is simply hanging, and yeah, which gives a great position for black and which makes the position equal. So that's why after knight into d5, Alireza first played a3, stopping this a3 attacks, and now he is preparing to attack the pawn. We have knight to f4 hitting the rook, so white cannot capture the pawn because knight into e2, it's with a check. So we have rook to e3, giving some protection to the pawn on d3. Queen to e8. If you go for capturing the pawn on d3 with the knight, and then simply queen f1 hitting the knight. And after knight to f4, we have queen into b5, capturing the pawn. The knight is attacked. There's some pressure in the pawn on e5. Not a good position for black. That's why first queen e8. And yeah, idea is very simple. Black wants to put his pieces to g6 and threatening a mating attack on g2 pawn. Now g3 by Alireza. Now after playing g3, this move is a great move actually played by Alireza, and this move shows how great he is. Because playing g3, if anybody sees this move, they were thinking like, okay, knight into h3 check, and yeah, what is the pawn down? But after what? What Alireza thought was, after knight into h3, he played king g2, hitting the knight. Knight is forced to go back on g5. He had a knight trade, and now he played queen to g4. So this is the level of Alireza. Now you can see definitely black is having the double pawn on the g file as well as the e file. And now white is having the very powerful move of a very powerful plan, you can say. White can play rook h1 at some point, followed by queen h3, and threatening a simple mating attack. So this is how his level is. Although he's a pawn down, but his level is simply phenomenal. After queen g4, black played rook f5, defending both the pawns. We have knight f3. Now knight is putting pressure on both the pawns as well. We have queen to f7, queen to e4, and queen to e4. Definitely the idea is to attack the knight and the rook. The knight cannot move because the rook is hanging. And now we have rook to f8, a brilliant move by Mamedyarov. A brilliant move because idea is very simple. If white tries to capture the knight, first of all, you cannot capture the knight because it's completely winning for white, because if you trade the pieces, at last white is the rook plus. That is why you cannot capture the knight. But what Mamedyarov thought was, he prepared g4. And after g4, white is forced to move the king because rook into f3 is already very deadly. Or even pawn takes is deadly, followed by queen to h5. That's why king f1. Rook into f3, rook into f3, queen into f3, queen into f3, rook into f3. And after rook into f3, it's an equal position, but black is having a slight edge. Because after king e2, black can go for playing g5, grabbing more space on the king side, and black is having the edge. So this was the reason Alireza didn't capture the knight, and he also played a fantastic move, which is rook to h1. He simply played the rook. He was like, okay, if you can't first of all capture the rook, capture my knight, because I can simply capture your rook. So this was the crucial moment for black in this position. And after rook h1, Mamedyarov played g6, which turned out to be a blunder in this position. A much better move in this position could have been to play queen f6. And after queen into c6, capturing the knight, we have g4. For definitely you cannot move the knight because the rook into f2 is simply winning, crushing position for black for white, because king g1, rook f1 check, king g2, queen f2, game over. So white is forced to move his king. Rook into f3, rook into f3, queen into f3, queen into f3, rook into f3, and after king to e2, it's an equal position. And the basic point here, after queen into f3, if white tries to capture the pawn, you can play rook f7. Now there is no pawn on g6. But what happened in the game after g6? We had the same variation. And after queen into f3, white played queen into e6 check. And here you cannot play rook f7 because the pawn on g6 is hanging. Okay, first of all, it's a mate because of queen e8 check, rook f8, queen into g6 mate, because the pawn was on g6. If the pawn would have been on g7, it would have been in equal position. So this was the stuff. So after queen into e6, we have queen to f7 by Mamedyarov. He's forced to move his queen back. We have a queen trade, rook to h4 going for the pawn, rook to d7, rook into g4, rook into d3. So in this position, if you count the material, white is having the 5 pawns and black is having the 5 pawns as well. But the main problem black is facing here is his g and the e pawn is isolated, so which makes black position a bit of an uncomfortable. So after rook into d3, we have rook into g6 check. So now black is a pawn down. King f7, rook c6 going for the pawn on c7, rook d2, and now we have c4 by white. Fantastic. You can also go for capturing the pawn. It's also a fine move after king e6. White can also play c4, but Alireza first played c4, rook into b2, and now we have rook into c7 check. King e6, rook to c6 check, king to f5. So black wants to bring his king near the king so that he would be having some chances of back prime mates. We have simply seen to b5, rook to b3 going for the pawn on a3, b6, rook into a3, b7, rook b3, rook e6, rook into b7, rook into a4, and now we have e4 by black. So first of all, it's an equal position, although white is pressing definitely because white is a pawn up, but theory says it's an equal position. Okay, and if you know how to play this position perfectly, you would be able to take a draw. We have rook a5 check, king to f6 going back, because if you try to come here, rook e5 is a bit of a problem for black now. So that is why we have king to f6 going back, king f1 bringing the king near the pawn now to capture the pawn on e4, and once black pawn is lost on e4, it's completely winning for white. We have rook b3 cutting the connection from the king, king e2, rook c3. So black is going to simply move with rook here and there to break, because black wants to simply cut off the line. We have rook a8, rook to b3, rook check, king e5. And king e5 is already a mistake. A much better move would have been to play king e6. But after king e5, we have king f1, king d4. And king d4 was a mistake in this position. A much better move at the place of playing king d4 would have been to play rook to f3, simply going for a rook trade. And if there would be if you trade the rooks, it's an equal position. Although white is a pawn up, how would we be able to convert the position? For example, if king u1, we have king e4, king d2, king d4, and if white tries to push the g pawn, we have king e4, g5, king f5, king e3, king captures the pawn, and after king f5, black is having the opposition, and all those who knows how to play the opposition correctly, it's a completely drawish game. Okay, so that's why rook have been a nice move, but he played king to d4. We have king g2, and now rook to b7, the last blunder of the game. At the place of playing rook b7, a much better move would have been to play king d3. Idea is very simple. Black wants to bring his king near the pawn on f2 so that there would be some weaknesses, and yeah, black would be having some ideas to move forward with his e pawn. But he played rook b7, which gave white a chance to play king to h3. And after king e5, we have simple g4 by white. Simple. Now black, and now first of all the rook have able to cut the a line of the king. So white is simply going to bring his king forward, push his pawn, and it's completely winning position. And black can't even push his e pawn because white will simply trade the pawns. The rook is cutting off the line. It's the pass pawn, and the game is over. So after g4, black played king d5, and after playing king d5, Mamedyarov himself resigned the game, and Alireza Firouzja with the white pieces won the game. So it was a pretty complicated game, but in the end, Alireza Firouzja beated Shakhriyar Mamedyarov, and he was able to break the record of 2800 rating barrier. This was the phenomenal game played by Alireza Firouzja, and his level of skills are just completely high. The way he sacrificed his pawn by playing, just let me see, yeah. On the move number 19, he played g3 and sacrificed a pawn, and it is not an easy move to find. By sacrificing a pawn, trading the knights, bringing the queen, and now just simply playing rook h1, he actually plays the perfect game, and once his opponent makes a single blunder, he ends the game on the spot. So first of all, if you like this game, then make sure to like the video, share this video with everyone to see this fantastic game played by Alireza Firouzja. And yep, if you're new to my channel, then make sure to subscribe to the channel as well, because I regularly come up with these interesting videos like this. So till then, stay tuned and keep watching Chess Vibes.